For so many Americans, this day, out of the whole year, it brings a visceral reaction whether or not you knew anyone directly affected on September 11th. We all remember exactly where we were that morning. And looking back 16 years later, we can see how that day changed our world as we know it. We talked about that just a few minutes ago. But children today, they don't have the memory to really make that connection. And Alex Miller is joining us tonight with a great example of that. Alex, we're entering a new time period when a lot of these kids, and let's say they're in school, they don't know why we take off our shoes when we go to the airport. They didn't know that you could walk to the gates before the airport. It's a whole different time.
It's a whole different world, and some of them don't even know that the events that day led to war. And I spoke with a social studies teacher, and she told me that some of her students don't even necessarily really understand that we are at war. And regardless, something that is a current event for you and for me is now just a point of history for a lot of students.
Alexa Vinner is just starting middle school.
I am 11.
She's settling into 6th grade and fills her afternoons with activities like so many other preteens.
Hip-hop, ballet, all sorts of stuff.
Her world looks much different than a middle schooler's did 16 years ago. In fact, Alexa wasn't even born when the world changed September 11th, 2001.
I was born in 2006.
What she knows is from her parents and teachers.
4 planes, and that 2 of them hit the Twin Towers, and then I forgot where the other 2 went. And then a lot of people died, and there was a lot of things going on. People had to get out of school. It was a whole big deal.
As sad as that day was, it's history to her. And she's not alone. Students who are seniors in high school were 1-year-olds when the towers fell. That means virtually every student in school right now has no memory of that day. There are more than 50 million children in the public school system. History teachers now have a daunting task, teaching a subject that is so vivid in their minds, but one their students have almost no connection to.
It's not they don't know the same way they don't know the French and Indian War. It's familiar territory. When I write 9/11 on the board every year, or even when someone says, like, we're going to have a meeting on September 11th, I get like sort of a feverish chill. I don't know. It's sort of an inevitable thing where I'm like, oh, 9/11. Even though it's been 16 years. I don't think my students feel that. I don't think that that date to them is so different than writing September 10th.
Jessie Feinberg teaches 11th grade world history. September 11th is in her textbook, but barely.
This is it. This is the whole paragraph.
One paragraph devoted to the day that changed the course of our world.
A paragraph is not the right amount of space for 9/11. This was awful, and so many people died, and besides the people who died are the people who grieved afterwards.
So it's up to teachers like Ms. Feinberg to fill in the gaps. In fact, the Department of Education doesn't mandate any coursework. States put together the curriculum, and even then, September 11th often falls to the bottom of the priority list. But a New Yorker herself, Feinberg finds the time, and she incorporates her own experiences.
This is one of the only historical events where I have that ability. I was in 5th grade, and all of a sudden, me and all my neighbors were getting called down to the office, and my dad was in our minivan picking us all up, and none of this made sense to us.
She's morphed her lesson into much more than just teaching what happened that day.
I really feel passionate about how that moment changed America.
Instead, she teaches about defining terrorism. As a 5th grader, she never heard the word before the towers hit. But her students live in a very different world today.
That word is used so frequently that it often loses its sense of brutality. What does it mean to be a terrorist? Can the government be terrorists? Can one individual be a terrorist? Does terrorism have to involve people getting hurt? Does terrorism have to involve buildings falling down? Does terrorism have a true definition that you can really pinpoint, or when we're scared, do we just call it terrorism?
Because she wants a larger message about perception to get across.
I try to focus more on skills and being a productive citizen than I do necessarily remembering dates.
Feinberg says it may not be her full responsibility to give detailed events of that day, but it is her job to make sure her students learned from what happened.
They should be proud of America that day, but also proud to understand that they are educated and productive and effective citizens, and that they can see the world in many different ways.
Alex, that is so fascinating to think about this new generation. What will this day mean to them? How do they have it in the set of historical, ethos? Let me ask you this. She talks to her students, right, about perception following all this.
She takes it from a couple different perspectives. She's a New Yorker. She's teaching in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. She said it's even different for her because she thinks of Twin Towers when she thinks of 9/11, but her students, any relation they have is because of the Pentagon. So she was saying that, some teachers that teach in states that weren't really affected by this might either not teach it or teach it a little bit differently just because of where they're geographically located. But she also focuses on perception in that America is not always necessarily the hero to other countries. And she said she felt a little bit unpatriotic choosing this as her 9/11 lesson, but she felt like it was a really important thing for her students to learn that we're not necessarily always the heroes. And she made a point to say, in this world of fake news, to really be able to look at a situation and the context and see all the different opinions surrounding it.
That was a terrific story. She seems like a really great teacher, too.
Super intelligent.
Thank you, Alex. We're back with more of The Why in 2 minutes.